Headlines this hour. The remaining victims of the 18 people killed in Gobozana village in Lusikisiki will be laid to rest this weekend. 7 people have reportedly been killed in a collision between a truck and a taxi on the N2 in the Eastern Cape. And family, friends and music industry colleagues are expected to assemble in Acacia Hall in northern Pretoria today for the funeral service of Mkuku gospel singer Solly Moholo. Good afternoon. Welcome to Week in Review. We are with you from our studio in Johannesburg, and during the next 2 hours we'll review some of the biggest stories of the week. I'm Gustav Reding, and you can participate, share your comments or ask your own questions by giving us a call. Our number here is the studio's 011 714 0680, 0681 or 0682. Right, 16 of the 18 people that were gunned down in Gobozana village in Lusikisiki 2 weeks ago will be buried today. Yesterday, the family of the victims held a night vigil. Let's cross there live now.
Uzofunda grade 8, standard 6 ngokolwimi lokuqala. Andinanto ininzi endingayithetha ngoThabiso ngaphandle kokumbona kuwo onke amatyeli, that is terms zesikolo, ekubantwana abaqaqambileyo nabaphumelelayo. Siye sothuka kakhulu isikolo ukwehla kwalenhlekele ichaphazela sona. Linyaniso elithethwa ngusihlalo ukuba siphangela phansi kwendawo endingazi uba ndingayibiza kanjani. Emva kwesiganeko, njengoba abantwana grade 12 behlala around isikolo, ndithi ngoku kusewehle esisiganeko, amantombazana kuye kongena endlini yawo isibhovubhovu somfo esiphethe umkhonto, abaye babona sengaphakathi endlwini belele ebusuku. Ukuba zikhona apha iziphathamandla, rhulumente wethu, kulo mngcwabo kaThabiso, ndingabhomboloza ndithi sincede rhulumente, kungemi abantu abaphethe izagweba kuthiwa bagade isikolo, ingathi kungabekwa abantu egeyithini esikolweni noko abatreyiniweyo kuba bagada abantu abayifuture yeli lizwe. Ngaphandle kwesikolo angeke siye ndawo. Sithukumesekile kakhulu isikolo ngokuhamba kwaThabiso. Bendingazi, ndidla ngokuqhula phaa esikolweni ngento ethi bayabonakala abantu abazelwe ngoJanuwari. Abafani abantu abazelwe ngoJanuwari banomahluko, ubukhona kwakho ubokwazi ba unomahluko. Ndixakiwe kuThabiso kutheni ebenomehluko kwesasikolo, emncinci, a young boy, kanti uzelwe kunye nam, sizalwa ngosuku olunye nge-15 kaJanuwari. Singake umphefumlo welityenjana ungaphumla ngoxolo. Kwesasikolo into esiyenzayo ngabo aba bancinane, siqeqesha ngabo ababadala, sithi khangela uba benzana abadala kuba sifuna bethi befika kwa grade 12 babe sebengumzi wase high school. Uswele kuThabiso sikwiphulo sisesasikolo sokuphucula iziphumo zesasikolo. Kodwa naba kunjalo hamba msukulwana kaMathu, hamba msukulwana kaTshangisa, hamba mntana esikolo. uThixo ubone kukuhle ukuba nawe ungabikho. Cela ukugqibela ngalamazwi. Incwadi yendumiso isahluko sama-48 ivesi 14 apho athi khona umbhali ukuba uYehova unguThixo wethu wohamba nathi ahambe nathi asikhaphe nasekufeni. Hamba Thabiso awedwa, Thixo wesasikolo unawe, uThixo wakonu unawe, Thixo wabazali bakho unawe. Ngemvume yenu mfundisi, cela nisivalele ifayile lomntwana phamba sisuke apha. Cela ukunikezela kuwe tata mfundisi, valwe ifayile yakhe sikhale phansi.
Kameni likayisele lonyana nelomoya oyingcwele uthatha unye obungcwele nguThixo omnye Nkosi yethu Yesu Kristu. Sikelela ke Nkosi nasi isikolo sikaThabiso. Sikelela abefundisi insapho. Sikelela abantu akwabe befunda kunye nabo. Sikelele ke Nkosi lo mzuzu wenhlungu subeka kuwe. Nefayile yakhe ke Nkosi ekuvalweni kwayo asingeyivala ungekho kuba ubunguThixo wethu izolo nguThixo wethu namhlanje nangomso uphinde ube nguThixo wakhe. Sikelela ke Nkosi lo msebenzi, usikelele ke Nkosi le fayile, usikelele ke Nkosi esisikolo ithi yonke ke Nkosi imithandazo yaso nezikhalo nezicelo zaso zenyukele kuwe Thixo njengesiqhumiso ngokunango naphakade. Amen.
Amen.
Asibulele ke kwisikole ingobozane. Sibulele kakhulu amazwi asuka kwinqondo.
Communities in mourning there in Lusiki in the Eastern Cape this afternoon. 15 of the 18 victims of this massacre that occurred there a week ago being buried today. 11 victims here in this Lambasi that you can see on your screen right now, the Lambasi village. 4 being laid to rest in Kwabala village in the Eastern Cape this afternoon. And of course, 18 people in total, most of them women, were killed in this mass shooting in the Ngobozana village. Now, as we saw the prayer there and heard the music from this funeral service in Lambasi in the Eastern Cape, we're now going to take you to the north of Pretoria. Acacia Hall is where the other funeral that we are covering today is taking place, and that is the funeral of Soli Moholo. Family, friends and the music industry colleagues are gathered there in the hall in northern Pretoria for this funeral service of the Mkuku gospel singer Solomon Molokwane. He's fondly known as Soli Moholo. He has been described as a loving husband, a caring father and a music industry mentor. Let's take you live there now.
Us to take their positions. I request that this passage be free for us, please. We need to use this passage. Local pastors, at the graveside, when we are done with our procession as police officers, our chaplain will hand over to you. Then you will continue with the funeral. I now call upon the bearers. Can I have a space on this passage, please? Police monarchs, you must be seated here. May we please be quiet. I now request the bearers as Warrant Officer Madisa, Warrant Officer Katidi, Warrant Officer Lidwaba, Warrant Officer Korombi, Warrant Officer Mahasha, Warrant Officer Mashila, Warrant Officer Tlungwani, and Warrant Officer Msimango to take their position. Bearers, please take your position. Move to the passage. Move to the passage. Hold. I now call our bearers, our pallbearers, as Brigadier Mutotoba, Brigadier Mabombo, Brigadier Morema, Brigadier Mpasane, Brigadier Mudlou, Brigadier Chibenga. We are now ready with our procession. I therefore request that the family will follow behind us as we are marching off, and the congregation will stand and remain standing. You'll follow when the last family member exits the door. God bless you. Police bonus, come near me.
Okay, so what you're witnessing there is the police pallbearers at this funeral service, because it is a special provincial funeral service being held today in honor of the life of the gospel singer Soli Moholo. The police have ceremonial duties at this funeral in the Acacia Community Hall in the north of Pretoria. That is what is happening there right now. He was 65-year-old when he passed away a while ago on the 2nd of October, of course. He was hospitalized after falling ill in August during that tour to Botswana, the pre-album launch tour that he was on. So the special provincial funeral taking place in Acacia in Pretoria, and he's going to be laid to rest at the Zandfontein Cemetery. But we're seeing the police pallbearers, they're part of the ceremonial part of that service. Right, so this is Week in Review on the SABC News channel on this Saturday afternoon. We will see you right after this break. Welcome back. The Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, recently revealed that a staggering 50 detectives leave the South African Police Service every month. This alarming rate of departure has contributed to a significant shortage of skilled detectives. Now, SAPS has lost approximately 8,400 detectives since 2016, reducing the number of detectives from 26,000 to 17,600. Now, this crisis is compounded by the fact that the remaining detectives face overwhelming workloads with hundreds of dockets assigned to each detective, making it challenging for victims to receive justice. The high attrition rates and shortage of detectives have severe implications for community safety and crime prevention. Now, to address this, the government has introduced a re-enlistment strategy to bring back experienced detectives. To effectively combat crime, it's essential to address these challenges and find sustainable solutions to retain experienced detectives and improve community safety.
South Africa's crime crisis continues to plague communities. Victims cry out for justice, but cases go cold due to a shortage of detectives. We spoke to Daniel, a victim of crime, who shared his traumatic experience.
So I got robbed. I got robbed, I got stabbed, and nothing is happening. I've been to court cases and still nothing is happening. Nothing has been sent to me, like a message or something, and still waiting for those people that is apparently on trial and still waiting for something to happen. I don't know what's happening. They just said that the people they caught them, and I don't know. So I just went on with my life.
Daniel's story is not isolated. Mama Gloria from Brixton fears victimization and shares her relatives' frustrating experiences with uninvestigated cases.
2022 was evicted in Mayfair. We did go open a case in John Foster, he just vanished. They just tell us the cop is on leave. When he come back, we'll help her. Until today, we never get helped. Even our own councillor, he don't assist us when there's things like that. They were not happy at all.
Brixton Community Forum chairperson Sophia Wells echoes the concerns of her community.
I think that if we get all detectives back, it would be a wonderful thing. I think we need the extra resources. I think one of the deterrents of crime, we always say, bring back the death penalty, But the problem is, if you don't catch the guy in the first place, or the woman, then you have a problem anyway. So the threat of being caught is actually what stops and prevents somebody from doing the crime. So I think having detectives is key, and professionalizing the police, having pride in what they do, being able to do their job. I think this is one of the things, you're tasked with keeping a community safe, but it's actually become very difficult and you have limited resources. So having more skilled detectives back doing their job, wonderful.
At least 50 detectives leave the South African Police Service each month. This is according to Police Minister Senzo Mchunu. The officers leave for various reasons, including being lured by higher packages in the private sector. But this seems to have left the criminal justice system paralyzed and communities exposed as crime soars unabated in some parts of the country. However, this could change as SAPS have decided to entice detectives back into the beat. Yongama Zikebe, a respected leader in Alexandra Township and the UDM City of Johannesburg councillor, weighs in on the re-enlistment initiative.
What's important, I think, in this day and age in 2024, we cannot be just, human resourcing the police system only, but we should be applying, technology into our ways of fighting crime. So we cannot just rely on just the detectives that were there and the ones who are here, and rely on our police system having to recruit more people into coming into the force. But we need technology also to be able to benchmark the skills and reskilling of others and all of that. But also the other question is that these detectives were away for quite some time in the police service. They do not know how to use the current technology that is already there. We accept that they're going to be trained for 3 months. The question is, we know how government it is. 3 months, is it enough to train people who are not in the police service and who are going to be introduced into the ICT sector right now? But we're saying that we are in this day and age of artificial intelligence and a fourth industrial revolution. Why don't you deploy droves? Things that are not going to need human resource on the ground or boots on the ground.
Back in the heart of Brixton, where crime rates soar, DA Ward Councillor Kyle offers a glimmer of hope with the re-enlistment initiative.
So crime is very rife in Brixton and surrounding areas like Auckland Park, Melville, which is also in my ward. I saw the numbers that they're enlisting. It's just over 200 people. So that isn't a significant amount of people. So I think they need to strategically deploy these people, and I believe they are going to mostly be deployed as detectives. So they need to bring those skills and impart them within the South African Police Service, because it won't be significant boots on the ground, but it will be knowledge that is coming in. So that knowledge can be used to assist with solving crimes, dealing with syndicates, mafias, and any sort of organized crime that operate within these areas.
The re-enlistment of experienced ex-cops may be a step towards justice, but it is only the beginning.
Right, now, this afternoon on Weekend Review, we examine the re-enlistment initiative, its potential impact and the concerns surrounding it. Joining us today is Professor Witness Kubiani Maluleke. He's a criminologist and a policing expert. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for being with us today.
A very good day for the listeners. Thanks for having me.
Professor Maluleke, what's your initial assessment of this re-enlistment initiative?
Overall, I would say that the re-enlistment of the police in relation to the detective section is just a right step, towards a reduction of the crime. But it's going to solve the crime problem slightly. It's not something that is going to be sort of a silver bullet kind of initiative. It's something that we need to work in progress and assess. We need to respect the process, and then we allow it yearly for them to be recruited back to the service. But the biggest question is, why did they leave the service in the first place? We really need to go back and understand what were the reasons for them to leave the service. And after that, that's where we'll be able to improve ourselves as the South African Police Service, as an organization. Because for me to recruit them back to the service, what if some of them left the service because they were under misconduct or irregularities? Well, some of them might be not longer interested in the service, losing the passion. So I think we need to go back to understand the retention strategy, the recruitment of such detective in a good manner, and then that's where maybe we can say that crime can be reduced to the acceptable level. But for now, this is just a small salt into the big problem.
Yes, and how can re-enlisting the experienced ex-cops address specifically the detective shortage and all those dockets that they have to deal with?
There is no way that the recruitment of over maybe 200 detectives can respond to the docket that are available or crime level in South Africa. It's just something that shows that they are doing something in relation to ticking boxes. I don't think, with honesty, that the ratio between the police and the citizens of South Africa vis-a-vis the crimes that happen can ever be addressed by recruiting 2,000 detectives. We need to enhance our investigation skills. We really need to ensure that we better ourselves as a service. But this recruitment strategy is not going to decrease the docket allocation.
Would you say that there are potential risks or challenges associated with re-enlisting previous police members?
Yes, there are challenges. The police service itself, it is not immune to corruption. It is not even immune to criminal. We have police officials who are criminals themselves, who have resigned, sitting at home, some are under suspicion. We might find ourselves recruiting back the criminals back to the service. So we need to be efficient in our recruitment process and make sure that we don't just say we are recruiting back the sergeant, the constables, the warrant officers back to the service. We really need to do thorough check in order to ensure that we don't recruit the criminals back into the service, for them to be looked with the others that are ethical in nature.
Okay, so you alluded to this earlier in terms of what long-term policing strategies should we prioritize in this country to combat crime effectively then?
All right. We need multi-agency approach whereby we will be able to involve other stakeholders. We have other stakeholders that are private in nature who can help the police to add boots on the ground, like your private securities under the guardianship of SIRA. They can help. The criminal intelligence need to be enhanced in order for the police to perform well in their functions. The communities as well, they need to provide detailed information to the police because we have our criminals in our communities. Another thing that we need to understand is the IP as well need to come into play, and the oversight bodies need to ensure that they look into the injustices that the communities face on the hands of the police. The likes of the civilian secretariat for police, they need to come in, to ensure that the police, when they do wrong, they face the mighty law of justice. Another thing that we need to do is to ensure that there is employees' wellness in the police. The police must be taken care of. They need to be protected. Whistleblowers need to be protected as well. That's where we can say then the police are not the only service that are responsible for the crime prevention, combating and investigation or maintenance of order. There will be other stakeholders that comes in, like your social development as well, your social workers, your psychologists, other departments, as well as other entities that can help the police. The police themselves alone cannot prevent crime. That's sometimes you find the SANDF coming in to help them in some instances because they are dealing with organized crimes. They are dealing with CITs, kidnappings, your violence crime. That doesn't need one person or one organization. It needs multiple organizations and integrated approaches to win the war against crime.
What about community-oriented policing? Can that enhance safety and trust?
Yeah, community-oriented policing, problem-oriented policing, intelligence-led policing, they are there in writing. But when we come to the ground level in terms of the implementation, that is not happening. We have Community in Blue. They are trying to ensure the presence of police boots on the ground, but the problem now is, are they trained enough to deal with criminals? Because even though the person committed a crime, at the end of the day, that person is still a human being. It needs to be protected in terms of the constitutional right. So we end up again facing civil suit because we don't even know how to approach the criminals. And we find ourselves going to court in a civil manner, whereby we need to defend ourselves again for not handling criminals in a good way. So community-oriented policing is a good strategy. It's been there, in relation to national crime prevention strategy. But overall, it's not something that we can say it's going to work without involving the traditional way of combating crime vis-a-vis the contemporary way of combating crime in line with the new technologies that we see ourselves in, and as well as the issue of involving other stakeholders that they can train us privately so in order for the police to be able to respond to the advanced technologies that are being used by criminals to be able to respond to crime as well holistically.
I want to ask you about that because to talk about modern crime, because things have changed since some of these members were in the police service a while back. So how can technology enhance the investigative capabilities and then in the end community safety?
Technology is a good tool to respond to crime, but it comes again with challenges in terms of ethical issues. We really need to understand that. One cannot just use a drone to just infringe another person's privacy. So we need to apply it with knowledge. We need to be trained. How can we use it effectively? Body cameras to be used by traffic cops. It's something that can be used. Investigative tools that can be used to determine maybe DNA analysis in terms of the backlog. Your radio frequency identification. They can be used nicely, but we can use them while we are knowledgeable about their application. And believe you me, those individuals that were in the service in the past, my father was a police. If you bring him back to the police now, what kind of a value is going to bring? Because he might not even know how to touch a computer, how to operate a drone. Those are specialized fields. They need people who should be trained to be able to operate such technologies. So we're not going to sit here and say technology can be a valuable tool. It cannot be. If it can be, however, it needs training. Not every police official can operate a drone. Not every police official can operate a machine that analyzes DNA evidence. We need training. These are specialized fields, and the government must put money into those specialized fields.
Let me ask you this. How does South Africa's re-enlistment initiative now compare to international best practice? What happens around the world?
We are left behind. We are left behind. If we are in the fourth industrial revolution in South Africa, we are still maybe in the second quarter of that, if not third. We are still lagging behind. Overseas, internationally, they prioritize policing. For one to be a police officer, it goes with passion. It goes with something of value. They value them. But come to South Africa, if you look into even the packages that they get, I was reading about the packages that they will get, the detectives, constables, the warrant officers, the sergeant. I mean, there's no motivation there. One cannot just go back to the service to earn peanuts, whereas now it's in the private sector earning big money. And another thing, in overseas, when the crime happens, they analyze it. There is quick response. There is quick analysis of evidence. But in South Africa, you spend years waiting for DNA to come back, and we have a backlog of DNA, DNA evidence in terms of analysis. So South Africa, in short, we are still developing in nature. Those are developed countries. You are China, you are USA.
Professor, thank you so much. Our time is unfortunately up, but thank you so much for joining us with your insight this afternoon. Professor Witness Kubiani Maluleke, criminologist and policing expert. This is Week in Review, and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back. You're watching Weekend Review here on the SABC News channel. Now, the communities in Lusikisiki in the Eastern Cape, of course, are in mourning today. Our reporter, Fundiswa Mtlekode, is covering the mass funeral service in Lusikisiki. She joins us now live with an update. Fundiswa, good afternoon. This is indeed a long program. How far are things now? Tell us what you witnessed there this afternoon and this morning.
Well, the funeral service has just started after 11 o'clock, or just before 12 o'clock. It started after the burial of 4 bodies of the Singina family as well as the Duguza family. So the mass funeral of the 11 people is now taking place here at Lambasi village. We have spoken to the families of the Singina household, who are saying that they are very sad by what has happened to their family. They were very sad to see their loved ones getting buried today. Earlier on, we saw the family members unable to hold themselves as they saw the 4 hearses coming inside the premises of their household for them to bury their loved ones. We also spoke to the Premier of the province, Mr. Oscar Mabuyane, saying that it is very sad to see such horrific and harrowing scenes of 4 family members getting buried. And he was saying that theirs as the provincial government is to make sure that they strengthen the work of the police in the province, to make sure that they deal with criminal elements accordingly. The Gaulekapa family is also here. They are also burying Ulungiswa Gaulekapa. We have the colleagues of Ulungiswa who were working with her, and they are attending this funeral, very sad and devastated that their colleague died in such a horrible manner. But we have one of her colleagues now to speak to us. Thank you very much.
Yo Ulungiswa sisebe umuntu onwabisayo emsebenzini, ethanda ukuhlekisa kakhulu, ebethi noba sesijoka simhlonta athi hayi babone Thixo bonwabisa kakhulu emsebenzini.
Niziva njani ke ngoku namhlanje that kulolu suku luvude lwafika usuku ebeningalulindelanga uba lungenzeka lokuba abe uyangcwatywa namhlanje?
Kubhlungu kakhulu sisi, kubhlungu kwamkela, kodwa sinethemba nje basibonile ngokaphabekwe khona kuba sizoxola ngoku.
Wena sisi wamazi njani Ulungiswa?
Mna sisi Ulungiswa ndimazi njengomuntu oright kakhulu emsebenzini, and ubewenza kakhulu umsebenzi wakhe pha kulaa ndawo sisebenzela kuyo kumzi wakwaShoprite. But into endingaske nditsho is that silahlekelwe singumzi wakwaShoprite. Asinalo elinye ithemba, like akho apho singabhekisa khona nguThixo kuphela ozokwazi ukusiduduza.
Ningamanina nibahlanu, abantu ababuleweyo uninzi lwabo ngabantu abangomama. Injani imenko ye-gender based violence okanye i-femicide apha kulo mmandla waseLusikisiki?
Kunzima kakhulu sisi apha eLusikisiki, kunzima kakhulu. Abantu abangomama bayabulawa, bayadlwengula, asisazi isizathu. Siyacela urhulumente akangenelele kakhulu kule nto, akasincede ngoba apho sihamba khona sizibona singaphephanga kuyo yonke indawo.
Thank you very much. The colleagues of Lungiswa Gaulekapa, they are saying that women are not safe here at Lusikisiki. They are begging for government to assist them and protecting them by providing police. They are saying Lungiswa was a very beautiful girl, and always vibrant, always talkative, always happy. Even when they tease her, she would only say, Lord, see them. So they are very devastated today that they are here in her funeral service. Back to studio.
Fundiswa, I can see there's a lot of people there behind you, gathering there underneath that tent. What is the program looking like for the rest of the afternoon? What can we expect to happen there in Lambasi? Okay, we're going to move on. That was our reporter there in Lambasi in the Eastern Cape, Fundiswa Mtlekode, joining us there today. Now we're going to take you to the other funeral in Pretoria, the north of Pretoria. Family, friends and music industry colleagues are gathered there in the Acacia Hall in the north of the city for the funeral service of the Mukuku gospel singer Solomon Molokwane. Fondly known, of course, as Soli Moholo, he has been described as a loving husband, caring father and music industry mentor. Our SABC News reporter, Calvin Dludla, is there in Pretoria this afternoon. Good afternoon, Calvin. Can you tell us how Soli was remembered at the funeral service today?
Good afternoon to you and to our viewers at home. Yes, Soli Moholo was described as a caring father, and he was described as someone who did care for other people, and most people who spoke about him, they spoke highly of him, and they are saying they are going to miss him so dearly. Let me introduce one of the familiar faces in the entertainment industry. That would be Opera Pizza. Thank you very much for your time. Let's start up to talk about Soli Moholo, your friend. He was a friend indeed, and a friend in need.
Yeah, Soli was a friend in need and a friend indeed. Yeah, I know Soli from time immemorial. You know, a person who was passionate about changing people's lives, you see. But unfortunately, Soli was so disappointed even when he died.
You wanted to talk about the ill treatment of artists in the industry, including Moholo.
When we're talking of America, America is so big because of the artists, the singers, the dancers, you know, and America is taking care of the artists. But here in South Africa, well, it's so very bad. Now you see people on screen, but act on television as if they've got money. Go to them, they've got nothing. The government will promise you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and when you die, that's where they come and advertise themselves that now we are in the government, and yet when you are sick, you are in the hospital, nobody cares. Soli was on TikTok all over, but Soli is sick, he needs an assistance. We have got so very big companies which are investing in our government, but the government is doing nothing. And when you start speaking by Vala, and now it is up to us as artists to make it a point that we take a responsibility about our lives and ourselves. But a black man, you are on your own.
I just want us to talk about the ill treatment of Soli Moholo. I just want to talk about him in Botswana being airlifted to South Africa sick and eventually passing away.
Soli Moholo, before he went to Botswana, he had a problem, okay, and which was supposed to be fixed by the government.
What problem?
Well, he had. When he told me that he was a diabetic and was suffering from hypertension and as well as the high blood pressure. Okay, yeah. But now as time goes by, Soli told me that, hey, Brabis, I'm not feeling well, but I'll make it a point that I must perform. Hey, be careful when you perform. Miriam Makeba died on the stage, and no, I'll be a soldier who died with his boots on. And unfortunately, when he went to Botswana to go and perform, trying to raise money so that they should go to the hospital and get a better treatment, he collapsed, and was from there he was taken to the hospital. Now, instead of government knew Soli was so sick, instead of saying, okay, let's take Soli even by helicopter, fly him to the best hospital, it was not like that.
You managed to talk to him though when he was in South Africa back from Botswana?
I met Soli before he went to Botswana, and before, I should think maybe a month ago. It was okay, yeah. Before he got sick, I should think apparently it was in September where he was in hospital. I couldn't even communicate with him, and also I was busy shooting movies with the young children, all kind of things. But truly speaking, the government has done us down.
You can tell me now, what do artists need to do, the young ones now, in terms of maintaining their health, in terms of making sure that they don't go around in the limelight messing around, not wasting their money, so that they can be better people when they grow up, and in times of need they have something.
So Soli's death, we close Soli's eyes and Soli open our eyes. And we need to pass the message to the young artists that please, as an artist, look after yourself. Okay, make it a point that when you're an artist, you've got a name. That name of yours, make use of it to open a business. When people come, whether we sell ash or whatever, people come and buy. They don't buy Mapopotan, they buy you. Make use of your name in order to sustain yourself, and make it a point that even if you don't get any job, whether acting on television or maybe you are not even called to come and perform, at least you are in a position to sustain yourself. Don't look at one thing that I am an artist, I'm waiting for them to call me to sing. I'm an actor, I'm waiting for them to call me and act on television. It does not work like that.
Thank you very much for your time, Professor.
Yeah,
Let me release you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is Biza telling SABC News about the late Soli Mohulo. He is saying, so they closed Soli's eyes, but Soli opened their eyes. He is encouraging young musicians and artists to make sure that they look after themselves. Soli Moholo is going to be laid to rest today. Colleague at Zemfontein Cemetery, they told me that it's not far from here. This funeral service of the late Soli Moholo was attended, amongst others, by the premier of this province, that would be Panyaza Lisufi, and the former premier of Gauteng, that would be Nomvula Mokonyane. For now, back to you in studio.
Calvin, thank you so much for joining us there today from Acacia, north of Pretoria. Our SABC News reporter, Calvin Lula, joining us today, telling us about the funeral service of Soli Moholo. Now, in the meantime, Police Minister Senzo Mchunu said police are determined to deal with criminals during the festive season. Mchunu was speaking during the launch of the National Festive Season Operation Plan in Naledi Township, outside of Pretoria. The minister was joined by the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lisufi, who lauded the launch for sending a strong message to criminals.
A show of force as law enforcement officials prepare for the December holiday season. Members of the South African Police Service, Gauteng Crime Prevention Wardens and Metropolitan Police descended on Mamelodi for a parade. Lisufi hailed the police's zero-tolerance stance as they unveiled plans to tackle crime in December. He said 18,000 CCTV cameras would be installed in Gauteng's townships to monitor criminal activities.
We are now putting up CCTV cameras in all our townships so that there's no crime that happens in our townships and we are not aware of that crime. We are proud that we are releasing 18,000 CCTV cameras. The good thing about the CCTV cameras, Minister, the camera dingi jojo, the record and lang.
National Police Commissioner General Fani Masimula said police would focus on several key aspects of safety this festive season. He also vowed that criminals would be hunted down and brought to book.
Aggravated robberies include your cash in transit heist, includes all forms of robberies. So again we say all those that commit this type of crimes, we will go toe to toe with them, we'll go head to head with them and make sure that they also have a holiday somewhere in darkness.
Police Minister Senzo Mchunu also noted a worrying trend of a high number of deaths between October and January of every year.
It is not that every festive season people must die. It's not like that. It's not like that. Let's be careful. Some of you will be traveling with children. They need your care. So drive safely. Don't drink and drive, but we'll be on the road ourselves, combined with transport officers, so that we can mitigate dangers on our roads.
The minister said police would be deployed to roads and places of leisure. Balentle Mthethwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Right, you're with Week in Review here on the SABC News channel. Stay with us, the news will continue at the top of the hour. Headlines this hour: call for criminal charges to be laid against people involved with the Spaza shop in Naledi after a search revealed non-compliance to health and safety standards. Fresh smoke plumes rose from Beirut's southern suburbs as hostilities between Israel and Lebanon continue to simmer, and concerns of a destabilizing Middle East worry the international community. And the Civil Defense Agency in Gaza says Israeli strikes have killed 30 Palestinians in Jabalia as Israel conducts a new offensive against Hamas. Welcome back. You're watching Week in Review, already in progress here from our Johannesburg studio. I'm Gustav Freiling. Good afternoon, and remember that you can join our discussions. You can give us a call on our studio number. It's 011 714 0680, 0681 or 0682. Right, Police Minister Senzo Mchunu hopes to strengthen coordination between the South African Police Service and private security firms in order to prevent South Africa from devolving into a criminal state. Mchunu met with the Private Security Industry Regulatory Authority as a first step in collaborating with some of the larger corporations in the industry. And this is part of a larger plan that could result in more coordination and cooperation between the SABC and the private security sector. Mchunu has stated unequivocally that the crime rate in South Africa is rising and is actually intolerable, with murder and kidnapping for ransom among the most common forms of law-breaking. Joining us this afternoon is Mike Bolhuis, who is a registered private investigator, to speak to us about this. Mike, good afternoon, and thank you so much for being here with us on Week in Review today.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Tell us about the significance of this collaboration and whether you think this will be fruitful.
It's absolutely significant, and it should have been implemented years and years ago. I'm concerned that it's maybe too late. The difference between the public, the government, and the authority in itself is enormous. There is no proper relationship. We've in the last year gone out of our way just to get the public working together with the authorities, with the governments, and we've seen a change, and it is better. But now to get the authorities working with private security, which for years has been very badly tainted, it's going to be very difficult. First of all, there are much more security companies that are corrupt than good. I would say, I haven't done a proper, thorough evaluation investigation, but I would say from our latest, at least 80% of them won't be able to really assist because there's so much corruption, and they won't make a difference. They will actually become a problem.
Okay, so as someone who works in the private security industry, do you believe the government has the funds to make this work, to carry out this whole process? And what are the most important steps that must be done now?
Well, the funds is going to be a problem, but I also have a problem with safety and security private industries that wouldn't themselves put their hands in their pocket, because that's their country. They are in it for the money, but they should absolutely, the top priority should be to save themselves from all the crime in this country, but all the people that they serve as well. So they should involve their monies and their expertise and their infrastructure and help the government and the authorities. Look, if we get I'm 100% for it, and I will assist on the highest level in government and with the police, and we work with the top police infrastructure. And it has shown that when we work with them and the public together, it makes a huge difference. We've seen it in kidnappings. The kidnappings has dropped. It's because ourselves and other safety and security industries, as well as the public and the authorities, worked hand in hand. You know, just curbing stuff like fake news, making sure that everybody, whether he plays the smallest part or is the general, just see eye to eye, have one common goal, and that's to identify this crime evaluate the crime, do the risk analysis, investigate the crime, solve the crime and prevent the crime, then it can work.
Okay, you said that private security should also put money in. Do they have the money? How lucrative is this private security industry?
Well, let me tell you, shockingly, and they must listen, they pocket and they coin. Just one simple statement. There are so many security companies that have got security guards out there that get a tenth of what they charge the clients. If they, for instance, charge a business, and a big business, they will charge an enormous monthly amount, and the security guards get just the required and requested fee that SIRA requires, the Security Officers Board in South Africa. So they just do what they need to do, and then they don't take responsibilities when there's crimes in the area. So there has to be a real serious step up.
Okay,
because
so,
we know exactly what's going on, and that's why I'm concerned.
What are some of the main areas or crimes that you think would need attention now?
Well, first of all, we need to deal with the serious violent crimes in South Africa. The kidnappings, the crimes against children, women and the elderly. Cash in transits has dropped tremendously. I'm very happy with that. But any case where there's a serious violent crime should take first priority. Rapes, child molestation, sexual violent crimes, domestic violent crimes, etc., etc. And then the economic crimes as well, because all these crimes are hand in hand, working together, the syndicates or the criminals. So in other words, a guy who commits a violent crime is also committing a serious economic crime, is also committing a cyber crime, because they use cell phones and technology to plan all these kidnappings and serious violent crimes. So the technology side of the authorities, digital and electronic communication should be really stepped up and checked with the financials that these criminals have. Because if you take the financials away, the criminal can't cope. If you take the freedom of communication and just getting information illegally as they like away, they cannot plan. So all these facets of the criminals needs to be addressed very harshly.
Do you believe this step is an admission by government, basically of failing to secure the country, of the national security?
I would rather say it is a realization into an admission, but I have respect for that. I have the utmost respect for and I'm positive about the new government we have, because they have realized things and they've changed things and they're trying to deal with corruption. Make no mistake, there are good policemen out there, there are good politicians out there, there are good people out there. There are 90% of good people out there. It's the 10% that hijacks this country. The problem of corruption is it's a small handful that influences a lot of people to do nothing, to stand aside, to look away, not get involved. And they're part of the problem. So they hijack our country with fear and intimidation as a small group, and they are the ones, that's the head that needs to be dealt with. But the government is basically admitting, guys, like we have been saying all along, we have to work together, put all our resources together, put our minds together, see eye to eye, at least on this subject, and that is to identify the crime, solve the crime and eradicate the crime.
So the minister said that he spent his first week in office talking to several police leaders, talking to IPIT, the investigative directorate, also to the Private Security Regulatory Authority. Do you know what these meetings were about?
Well, basically what we've discussed here, the possibilities, can we trust the private security industry? SIRA will have to, and there's a lot of corruption in SIRA as well. And SIRA knows this, and they have a huge problem dealing with it, but they're also trying their best. And the same with the heads of the police. The police knows there's a lot of corruption in in those that work for the police. They know that. And remember, corruption, as I've said, is not only the policeman that physically commits the crime, but the one that doesn't protect and serve and do his work, or is not equipped, or not trained, or not being part of the solution. That's the main problem. So the meetings was definitely about how shall we go about this? How do we get all these private security firms, first of all, evaluated, and if it's worth it, the effort, and as you've said, what it would cost, and how do we go about it, and what do we put in place that there's no corruption or abuse? Because the other concern I have is that what private security companies many a times do, they would abuse the government fees. And the main thing that I suggest the government does is that they know exactly inside and out how does all levels of safety and security companies in South Africa work, because we're different. We are specialist investigators, serious violence, serious economic, serious cyber. But 95%, 98% of all security companies are more in guarding. They're more on visual policing. They're more on an information structure, informant structure, making a difference because they are there and they can quickly act as a task team. And that's what they've discussed. How do we bring them all in, each one playing their part and role without misusing the situation or abusing the situation?
Mike, just lastly, quickly, you mentioned this earlier, modern crimes, technology, cybercrime, and so on. Where does the capability sit to actually fight this?
I don't want to use the word non-existent, because we've once again seen that the authorities with ourselves and others join together, and those that do have the proper equipment to track and trace, to get all digital and electronic information, background information. And look, if you have information before a crime's committed, then you can prevent the crime. If you only act afterwards, it's after the fact, then you still have all that information necessary in order to save the people further, if it's a kidnapping, for instance, or get the loot or money back, or to get or catch the criminals. So that's where we have, with other situations in our country and our authorities, a huge problem. It's very, very difficult to get the technology in, and the country has tried it many a times, but it didn't work, and there was corruption there involved as well. But that is something that needs to be concentrated on, because information is power.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon. Thank you for your insights, Mike Borlows, who is a registered private investigator, and he was talking to us there about the possible collaboration between the South African Police Service and the private security industry. We continue with this story now. Mourners gathered at the Naledi Hall in Soweto for the memorial service of the 5 children who died of suspected food poisoning last weekend. They had allegedly consumed snacks bought from a foreign-owned Spaza shop. The incident has led to the closure of a number of Spaza shops in the area by the disgruntled residents.
The Naledi Community Hall was filled to capacity. Learners, community members, local government officials and the Gauteng Education Department were in attendance at the mass memorial for the 5 deceased learners. The mood was somber as teachers described the impact their deaths have had.
On Friday, when he left,
it hurts so much to realize that he's no more. However, I'm grateful for the time I had to spend with him. Njabulo was not just a child, he was energetic, together with his friend who is in hospital. They used to compete well in class.
The residents are still fuming. They demand answers and a proper inspection of the Spaza shops.
Government needs to do that. They make laws. After making laws, they must implement those laws, whether it's policies or bylaws. That's one way of doing it. And then the other way of doing it, government can also come up with campaigns whereby communities are taught about the dangers of any other situation that may affect them adversely.
Gauteng Education MEC Matume Chilwane says this incident will be dealt with as a priority.
The Spaza shop that is said to have provided this food that poisoned our children, led to our children's death, was found to have a certification that it can provide this service. So really, it means those who are accountable need to start doing their work and really ensuring that it's done. So that's why there was a call on the local government, local authorities in particular, for health, because they're the ones who give this certification that a person can trade for food, to really start doing more work and more accountability and really getting things right.
The 5 children who were between the ages of 6 to 10 will be given a mass send-off at the Naledi Community Hall on Sunday. Lerato Makula, SABC News in Soweto, Johannesburg.
Welcome back. KwaZulu-Natal Judge Piet Koen says the only way to deal with Stalingrad tactics is to reduce the number of appeals available to a disgruntled accused. Koen was interviewed on Monday by the Judicial Service Commission for one of 3 vacancies on the Supreme Court of Appeal. Now, for more on this, we are joined this afternoon by the constitutional law expert, Advocate Lufuno Nevandwe. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for being with us here today.
Good afternoon.
Let's ask you, what are your views on how the limiting of appeals basically could impact accountability for corruption, particularly among these high-ranking officials?
Yes, the proposal by Judge Koen is a progressive proposal. The unfortunate part of it is that in terms of our constitution is that every accused person has a right to a fair trial, which includes the right to appeal a judgment if the accused person is not satisfied with that judgment. But the strategy of Stalingrad tactics, it is a problem because it allows accused person to escape accountability in terms of the actions which they have taken while they are still in a public service or in government. So because they keep on appealing decisions, justice. And you know that justice delayed is justice denied.
Okay, so in your view, how urgent would you say it is to look at this, to reform the appeal processes?
It is more urgent under democracy. Our democracy is still 30 years of age, and it has been proven that there are some of the things which were supposed to have legislated or put them in the constitution. Because currently, the current law allows an accused person to appeal, and there is no number of appeals which an accused person can do. As long as the accused person has the money, the accused person services of the lawyers, the accused person can appeal. So, but I believe that at some stage, we have to have a law which limits the number of appeals so that you don't have accused persons who use the strategy in malafide or in bad faith. They use it. So the bottom line is that there must be a law which limit the number of appeals which can be explored by an accused person.
Okay, so there's been some disagreement about who is responsible, who must act to curb these Stalingrad tactics, especially that have delayed the justice for key figures behind the state capture, of course, and the arms deal. It's dragged on for many years now. Who must act? Is it the Law Commission? Is it the courts, Parliament, the law societies, the Chief Justice? Who is responsible?
All the parties, all the arms of government must act, because the Parliament must reform the current law to address the number of appeals an accused person can do. So I believe that there is a need for a law to be crafted to address that, but also on the judiciary. The judiciary has the responsibility also to guard against accused persons who abuse the power or who abused their status in a society. In a case wherein when an accused person has money, he explores every option, any decision which is taken by the court. So I believe that the judiciary must watch out and guard against those accused persons who abuse the process or who abuse the constitution. We know that the has granted the accused persons the right in terms of Section 35 of the Constitution, to say that every accused person has a right to a fair trial and have a right to have access to a court. So in other words, there is no limit in terms of the Constitution. But that right, when it's being enforced, the judiciary must interpret the law carefully so that the guard against those who abuse the process or who abuse the remedies which are available to them in case they are not satisfied with decisions of the court.
Okay, so you mentioned this earlier, that you would like to see a law crafted. Who would you like to see involved in the crafting of that law, and how long do you think that will take then?
It might take time, but remember we are fortunate now. We are in the 7th administration. Parliament is starting its 5-year term, and they can pass the bill, but it must also start with the Law Reform Commission, which must do research. Because remember, the rights which we have in the Bill of Rights, these are hard-fought rights. And you don't want these rights to disadvantage accused persons, because you want accused persons to be afforded their constitutional rights. But at the same time, you want to also balance it to those few who might want to abuse the process. So you have the opportunity for the Law Reform Commission to do a thorough research on the matter, to so that there is a limit on the number of appeals which an accused persons can explore. And also, you after the Law Reform Commission, the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Constitutional Development can also start with that bill, but it must also come from the Department of Justice, because the department is responsible for legislation. So the department can also craft a draft bill, which will pass through parliamentary processes by the Portfolio Committee, and then the National Assembly. And if the bill also affects the National Council of Provinces, it will also go there for also consideration. So it is upon the legislative arm of government and also the judiciary, and also at the end is the executive who will have the final say to also approve the law in terms of the processes.
Yeah. So how will Judge Koen's views apply when you look at the Constitution? The Constitution is famous for the human rights, and to balance that then, the Constitution versus the human rights.
So Judge Koen's views are not supported by the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear that there is no limit on the side of the accused person. If an accused person is not satisfied with a judgment, he has a right to appeal to every forum which is available to him. You will remember that if you are not satisfied with the decision of the magistrate court, you go to the High Court. If you are not satisfied, you go to the Supreme Court of Appeal. If a matter raises a constitutional matter or it has a public interest, you also go to the Constitutional Court. That is the current legislative system. So Judge Koen's proposals are just proposals which are not the law, and it is up to the judiciary to take into account the proposals, and also up to the legislative arm of government to change the law to address those proposals. The proposals are progressive. It will go a long way to ensure that those who violate our laws, those who involve themselves in corruption, the account to us in terms of how they've spent the public money, especially cases involving corruption. We have a challenge of rooting corruption in the country, and the reform of the law will go a long way to improve the status quo, so that you find those accused persons successfully prosecuted, sentenced, and serve a prison sentence, which will also serve as a deterrent to others who might even want to commit crimes in future.
What do you think is the possibility that if that law is crafted, as you explained to us, that some accused who is not a rich or a famous person with lots of money will have his or her human rights then hampered, limited?
Remember, as much as you have the rights, accused persons have the rights, they also have the responsibilities. Remember, these rights, they come with also the responsibilities. It's not about limiting the rights. It's about ensuring that there is no abuse of the right, which is a genuine cases where the accused persons have a case to appeal. And I think that those must be encouraged. And we only discourage those who use the money to challenge every judgment which is against them.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon for your insight. That was Advocate Lufuno Nevondwe. He's a constitutional law expert. You're watching Week in Review here on the SABC News Channel, and we'll see you right after this. Welcome back. A memorial service was held yesterday in Soweto for 5 children who died after allegedly eating food from a local Spaza shop in Naledi. The children, aged between 6 and 10, died after experiencing stomach cramps, vomiting and drowsiness. Now, the Gauteng legislature has called for stricter enforcement of bylaws to prevent the sale of fake and expired goods in Spaza shops. This as tensions have been high in the area as residents closed and looted foreign-owned Spaza shops. Now, the 6th child who consumed the alleged poisoned food is fighting for his life in hospital. We are joined this afternoon by the Gauteng MEC for Economic Development and Finance, Lebogang Maile. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Afternoon, and thanks for having us.
Before we get into it, I heard that you are going to visit Soweto tomorrow. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, tomorrow there's a funeral, as you know, of the deceased, the 5 kids, and we want to convey our condolences. So we will visit, I think, later in the week after the funeral, because we don't want to disrupt the funeral activities. I think at this point, all of us must focus on mourning and respecting the families of the deceased, and that's why we had postponed the visit.
Okay, so in the meantime, the legislature's Portfolio Committee on Community Safety said that this tragic incident highlights the urgent need for stricter enforcement of the bylaws to prevent the sale of expired and harmful goods, of course, particularly in these township areas. Are the preliminary investigations pointing to this as a cause?
Well, I don't have details about the investigations as yet, but we want to agree with the Portfolio Committee, and I think we need to make sure that we work with the communities and call on our communities, especially those who own these shops, because in most cases these shops are rented out to foreign nationals, some of whom don't have proper documentation by our residents. So the reason why we want to visit Soweto is because we want to have a conversation with the locals and those who own the shops, so that we can look at how do we help them to commercialize and then make sure that they run these themselves, so that you don't have a problem of people who are illegal ending up running the shops and end up running illicit activities.
And we've seen tensions in this area before, also in other parts of Gauteng, around these Spaza shops. There's a feeling that say that some of them operate with little or no monitoring by the Metro Police officers or the authorities. Do you share that sentiment?
Yes, I do, and that's why we have bought a campaign called Fix Your Business, because there's a lot of these shops, and a lot of them don't even apply for licenses, and the municipalities in most cases and the authorities don't know of their existence. So I do share that, and I think we have to move fast in making sure that we rate and we also identify those that are illegal, and we certainly clamp down on them, because if we don't, it's not going to help the situation. You will have these illicit activities. You are not going to deal with unemployment. You are also going to have these dangerous products that are being sold because they want to buy cheap products so that they can make money. And I think we do share the sentiments of the committee.
So what is your approach then in terms of accountability in preventing the continued sale of goods such as that?
We have to make sure that the health compliance authorities of the municipalities do what they're supposed to do. They work with the Metro Police and other law enforcement agencies, but we also need the communities to play their part as well. And that's why we are saying we have to make sure that we help them with the skills, with the resources, with the systems, with the networks, and that's the role that the government will have to play. And we're prepared to play that role. So everybody has got a role to play. The health authorities, the law enforcement authorities, the communities and government, we all have to collaborate.
Okay, so these people, of course, they earn profits despite the well-being of the community. They're being endangered. Does your department have any idea how many of these Spaza shops there are, and what happens to the money? Does the money stay in the province of Gauteng? Does it leave the country?
And that's why I was relating to illicit trading, meaning it's not legal. So if it's not legal, it means there's a lot of these Spaza shops that are not registered. Therefore, you wouldn't know how many are they. And if they are not registered, it also means that the South African Revenue Services doesn't know of their existence and is not able to collect taxes. So we have to clamp down on them, because this is a lot of money and that is circulating.
Okay, let me ask you about the hospitals. You've said that if the Gauteng government is not vigilant with its finances, particularly in relation to the Department of Health, it could be bankrupt by 2025. So isn't the continued deaths and hospitalization of those victims of the contaminated foods and so on putting pressure on state resources even further?
Well, firstly, we will never be bankrupt as a provincial government, because the finances are in good hands. That's the first. But we do have constraints, because we have lost about 35 billion rand of our income, and this 35 billion rand is as a result of the budget cuts that you have seen throughout the country, about 15 billion of that, and the 20 billion is the e-tolls. So we are constrained and facing pressure, and health and education are the two most constrained areas, because every year we have about 230,000 people coming to the province, and all of them, they need health services, they need education. So, as you correctly say, these unfortunate incidents add to the pressure that the health system is facing.
So the National Health Act mandates that all businesses dealing with food or other consumables must adhere to strict health and safety standards. Is there a database of sorts of how many are in step with the law? Is there any way to know?
I think the only way to know the only way to know is to firstly make sure that they register. But secondly, government has to be proactive and approach them. And that's why one of the things we are doing as Gauteng provincial government is to create a database of all businesses, ward by ward and street by street, to know how many, what activities are they engaged in. So we have started with that process.
Okay, so there's been continued calls, of course, for the law enforcement agencies, Metro Police and so on, to conduct regular inspections to monitor the compliance of these shops. What can your department do to tighten regulation, to tighten oversight?
Yeah, well, I think we have to work with the communities, which is what we are doing. And we have to, because I think we can't just put law in place without consulting with communities and without those laws addressing specific issues. So in this case, we need to know what is it that is wrong and what is it that the communities would want us to regulate, and we will play that role. But in the meantime, if you're not registered, it means you're running an illegal business, and if you're selling poisonous food, it's just illegal. We don't even have to wait to introduce new law and all that. For now, we have to make sure that the laws that are there, that are in place, must be implemented.
What about using something such as the Competition Act, which gives powers in terms of price discrimination and so on, to use that to pressurize these owners?
No, you can, but remember, these guys are just small. The price in most cases is for these big businesses that are squeezing out the smaller guys and all that. So we must use all the different avenues where possible.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon and for your contribution today. That's the Gauteng MEC for Economic Development and Finance, Lebogang Maile. You're watching Week in Review here on the SABC News channel, and we will see you right after this. Welcome back to Week in Review. We're going to continue now with our conversation about the township businesses, and to get the perspective of business owners and township entrepreneurs, we are speaking today to Bulelani Balabala, who is the founder of Township Entrepreneur Agency. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us here today.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us on the platform this afternoon today.
So with the high unemployment rates, the high cost of living, of course, how many people go into entrepreneurship in townships because of these conditions in order to take part in the economy in that way?
No, man, I mean, I think there's quite a number of them. I think when you sort of look at the report that was released about a few years ago, you know, just looked at the fact that there's over 1.8 million informal businesses, right? But in and itself is sort of a conservative number when you sort of look at the fact that we don't take into consideration, number one, the individuals who are already in formal employment but taking on side hustles, but also equally so, the fact that there's very little data on the ones who are actually operational within this market. And I think really just the nuanced in and around, consistently utilizing the word informal, because I think when you sort of look at this particular market in and itself, it's one of the most formal markets that you would ever come across, which at the end of the day, when you sort of unpack the conversation around formalization, you then find that, there is no incentive for quite a number of these entrepreneurs that work in these spaces to formalize, purely because of the way in which they're operating and how much revenue that they're generating at the end of the day.
It is believed that up to 70% of South Africans live in areas that have Spaza shops, of course. Now, given the size of your membership, what would you say is the size or the presence of the foreign-owned shops in the townships, and how does that impact on the local entrepreneurs?
No. I mean, the size in itself is tremendous. I mean, when you sort of look at the the work that we do across the country is a nationwide work. And then I think you look at the estimates that talk to the fact that the Spaza shop or the Spaza red market is worth well over 150 billion, right? You then start to understand, and when you actually look at some of the data as well, that, you know, foreign nationals have taken over quite a large chunk of that particular market in terms of operational, right? Within various communities and townships across the country, even in some, even in most rural communities in and itself. And I think really one of the big conversations, not even conversations, but really one of the big things that is needed, I think, from a government perspective is for them to really tighten up in regulations and policies, but also equally so is also for them to also create an enabling environment for youth-owned businesses to then thrive. Because I think when they are able to consider markets or business avenues like your Spaza shops, you know, selling veggies on the side of the road as a potential avenue for them to actually transact, and as business in itself in a conducive environment, then we're able to grow a competing nation where the young individual don't just look at a particular stream as a revenue generating stream, but they can look at all opportunities that are available within this market.
How would you be able to improve competitiveness in this informal market and to make sure that there's not these huge discrepancies with prices?
The first one is you tap into what they've done. And I think, well, you know, we tap into what they've done. I mean, the buying power. You know, mass buying power. I think being able to mobilize people under the umbrella of, you know, collectively going to negotiate with the retailers, right? Because the retailers at the end of the day in the business of being able to drive their sales at the end of the day. So if you are able to collate these individuals under one umbrella and number one, equal out the fact that you are trying to drive revenue, that's the first thing. The second part is, you know, taking on a collaborative approach to the way in which business is done. You know, I think historically with individuals who grew up in the township, I think similarly myself, when you sort of look at the Spaza shop, you sort of looked at the Spaza shop as a business that was done by either your grandmother or someone older as a subsistence business, but not one that, but not necessarily as a business that you would then go into. Which is why I think part of going out into the market is to also then recondition individuals around where opportunities are. You know, in most cases, we think that opportunities are in corner offices in Bryanston, but opportunities are in the township economy, right? Which is why, I mean, you sort of look at the estimates talking about the township economy being worth over 900 billion, and we believe that that's a conservative number. It's worth a little bit more than that, right? And I think as individuals who grew up within these markets or live within South Africa, it's important for us to...
Are you still there? It seems as though the line is frozen there now. It was quite an interesting conversation, and we're trying to speak here to Bulelani Balabala of Township Entrepreneur Agency. It seems as though it's frozen and we can't speak to him right now, but what an interesting conversation about the township informal sector. We continue with this story. A Kimberley runner has achieved an incredible feat in the running world. 76-year-old Dieter Meyer, also known as Delta Dieter, has completed his 600th park run, and he's not even close to hanging up his running shoes. Our reporter Ulrich Hendricks has more.
Well, 76-year-old Dieter Meyer has just concluded or just completed his 600th park run. Now that is an achievement for everyone and one to be celebrated. Let's talk to the man in question. Dieter, 600, how do you feel?
Yeah, no, I feel great, man. By top of the world. And I hope I can make another 200 so I can get 800 up to 1,000. Thank you, up top of the world.
So where did you start with this?
No, we started in 13 years ago on the 12th of November in Delta Park, Johannesburg, with Bruce Forders. There's 26 of us, and that's, I think only half of them are still running. So it's, I'm very, very proud, especially that Bruce organized that day. It was just a social gathering at Delta Park, and it became a major event in South Africa and in the world.
So you've been running all over South Africa basically at these park runs. Which is your favorite?
Oh, that's a different one. I've done already 152 different park runs in South Africa. My favorite one, ooh. Okay, it's going to be Delta first, and I like 1,000 Hills in Natal. That's also the only one I beat Bruce Forders.
You're talking about Bruce Fordyce, of course, the one famous for Comrades Marathon. You've done a few Comrades as well.
Yeah, I entered 19 or 20, but I only completed 10 because of lots of injuries. And, you know, if it's not your day at the Comrades, it's not your day. But I won't do it again. But I like it. I love Comrades. I love my 2 oceans. I've done 10 2 oceans. And I should have actually been today in Myronsport to do the Myronsport. I've done 30 Harry Smith mountain races. So I like my running. I like to be outside with, you know. And about 3 years ago, I moved from Johannesburg to Kimberley, and I like my club, Kimberley Harriers. They all came here today to support me, and I'm very, very, very happy. And all my friends around here, and it's a very, very nice, great community in Kimberley to run in the Northern Cape. Especially today, it's very hot. But you get ice cold weather in Kimberley. You freeze in Kimberley, but it's beautiful here. The Northern Cape is different to any other, and I hope I can, with the help of the Lord, I can do many, many more.
So many more, but we also see some people who are basically starting out, starting on the fitness journey. What is your sort of advice to runners who are just starting out?
Just get out of bed. Come out in the morning instead of going to the mall, or just get out, walk, stop going to the park. Just look at yourself in the morning and say, look, I have to do something about my health problems. There's many people I know, they're not fit, but just by doing exercise, walking around, you know. And parkrun is easy. You don't have to be an athlete or somebody who is fit. Any shape, doesn't matter. Just go and walk, and you're going to be happy. You made it. You start your weekend like a newborn.
Thank you very much.
But the only problem I'm seeing, we need, especially parents must bring their kids here. The school should come here on Saturday, you know. They must, I'm sure there's many kids, you know, that instead of coming here, they're sitting at home 9 o'clock on the table and playing with the computers. The parents should bring the kids out. They must take them out and lock the doors. They go out and play and go do some sport, but the parents are not doing it. We need more youngsters to come to parkruns and do sport.
Thank you very much.
Maybe I should be the sports minister and take over from the minister. Huh? No? Okay.
Thank you. Talking about taking over from Gayton McKenzie, sports minister, saying that, just get up and start running. Of course, saying also that it's very important for young children to also start on this fitness journey and start running. But since the November 2011, so it's about 13 years that he's been running, and today 600 park run. That is for Dieter Meyer.
And what a nice and inspirational story to end the show today. That is it from us. Tomorrow at 12 you can join us again for the week ahead here on the SABC News channel. The news continues at the top of the hour, of course. Take care.